We haven't had the conversation about loss yet, but we think it's coming in a range of ways. We know that. The last point I think that's really important is for us to frame the future in terms of what we want to become, and how we actually name our future is really important. I would say in terms of our colloquium in the last couple of years, and we've been at this for 14 years, we've done a lot of research, we have a lot of evidence about our challenges, and Susan talked about them. I'm sure that Paul could echo some of them as well easily, but we basically said that's the past. What do we do about our future? How do we stop and focus on what our opportunities are, and how do we learn from the past? And I think that's very important. Can we do this together? There are, I think, 5 questions, and these are really, I think, instrumental in terms of thinking about the future. Do we see the same future for government and sector relations? What does that look like? The past is the past. Can we continue on? Probably not. Second point is, what's the structural relationship that we need to put in place and sustain beyond one administration of government? I do have to say, in terms of the previous NDP government, the current NDP government, we have a direction. We have 4 years of continuing to strengthen our structure, our relationship. We have an ally that sees a lot of things in a positive light. Doesn't mean that it's an easy conversation, because there will be some difficult decisions the government will make in the next year, and we know that. But we have to think about what's the structural relationship that will sustain that relationship beyond one administration of government. Haven't had the conversation yet. And it's scary to believe that if there's a change in government, what will happen to us then? Have we been able to move forward with a sector council modality? Does that stop, and does that reverse? The opportunities to actually sustain the conversation about the nonprofit sector is also critical. And I think it really is that conversation. Are we charity? What does the sector look like? How will government change? Where will our politicians be? How are our boards and staff going to think about that sector? What's the conversation we need to have? How do we frame it? How are we going to do that? And ultimately, it's about how do we harmonize these ideas and opportunities between those that are financially and in-kind supporting us, including the other nonprofit funders, donors, whether it's the Foundation, United Way, or private donors. How do we harmonize those ideas? We are talking about labor market. Are they interested in labor market? We don't know. I suspect it's hard to have those conversations with donors. When we talk about vacancies, when we talk about the majority of our staff are women who are retiring poor, we know that now. We know the minimum wage for health and social nonprofits is $26,000. We've done stories on people who've retired who are retiring poor. What does that mean? Big issue. And we've had the conversation with Paul. What do we do about that? We're actually asking people to actually martyr themselves. That's the language some people are using to say that their commitment to the sector is to martyr to the cause. They're working with people who are vulnerable in need of services, and they actually exit poor. What does that mean? Real problem. And that's something that only became clear in our research, and now having the discussion on that. It's not as if we didn't know some of that, but we didn't know. Empirically, we now know. I'm not going to go through this because some of the history is explained, and I will be able to give you a copy of the slideshow. I think that would probably be useful. It'll be on our website as well. But it's interesting because that came from Peter Ellison's work, who's trying to look at the structural relationship of government to the sector, and that's the Manitoba history of government and its relationship to the sector. So we'll have that available for you. But let me just talk to you about what we do. So as a sector council, as a member of the Alliance of Manitoba Sector Councils, we do labor market research. We have a range of initiatives. So there's labor market research, and it's not just simply in terms of looking at the current labor market, but there may be other research that we do in terms of compensation surveys. There's a whole set of surveys and work we're going to do around skills development. So there's an LMI piece that we are still at the very beginning stage, but I think we're moving forward with the second deployment. And we have a working group on that, and I think we're moving forward very quickly on that one. Right, Sarah? Yeah. Absolutely. The other part that we focus on skill development, so we started, and I have to go back, in isolation of actually having good research, 2 minutes, quick. We actually started to put some research or some skills development in place, and some of the examples are in place, but we are rethinking what are the skill sets of our sector, and that's happening this fiscal year. We also have a focus on HR, and as it basically identifies, we're building mechanisms for peer learning, shared services. We also have a responsibility as a federation to look at advocacy and also building awareness, and we're doing that directly in relation to government, not just in terms of the current pilots, but the future as well. Our future, and just very quickly, our future and our colloquium helped us start looking at the future. We have 3 themes that we need to focus on. Building on diversity. We are not a diverse sector. We are incredibly weak in terms of actually walking the talk about inclusion. The second part is, are we looking at collaboration, unity, and leadership? Exactly what we have to talk about. It's about unity of a sector and focus on the future of leadership. And then ultimately, the bigger conversation is, we know there are limited resources. How do we take that as an opportunity for change? Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that's a formidable task to go after those 2 speakers, and maybe actually I should, in paying some tribute to both Professor Phillips and to Martin, get right to my punchline. I think it's very true the way that both of them characterized the situation we're in right now between the nonprofit sector and government. Is I think that there is an awareness now of the importance of that sector, and I think it's grown in a lot of places. I'd like to feel flattered by Martin that we're a little bit ahead of the curve in Manitoba, but I wouldn't exaggerate that. But I think actually the bottom line, and it involves both of our speakers here today, is we need to understand better what is going on. We need more research. We need more dialogue between government, probably because I think part of this is, as both of you said, the self-identification of the sector is a big part of this. I think we need a lot more dialogue within the sector itself. And then let me very neatly segue to pay tribute to my hosts. First of all, the Free Press and the News Cafe. Dan, I don't recognize you without your hockey helmet on, but also the policy for the Institute for Policy Research, which is I think one of the things that the university has begun to take on in recent years. To my mind, and all of the people, Robert Ermel's here, Professor Miller, Professor Levasseur, and of course the Duff-Roblin Chair, Professor Sigurdsson. I mean, all the people who can make this work and are going to be working on it are in this room with us right now. We also have Deborah Woodgate, who's done a lot of work for the government to try and promote this concept. But to tie these 2 ideas together, you know, any institute has to establish its niches, and I think this area, which is so important and yet so understudied, and one might say misunderstood even by people who are working within it, I think it's a perfect niche project for the institute to focus on. Now, let me just, I think that I always feel like a bit of a dilettante getting up as government guy after people who live and breathe a subject have given their reflections, and they actually said a lot of what I was going to say, so I'll try and be fairly quick and then just step out of the way to allow for questions from people who really do know their stuff.